Welcome to Deeper Living, where today we're talking with Eric Wilson, author of The Best of Evil and A Shred of Truth. Stay with us.
From coast to coast across North America, this is Deeper Living, bringing the inspirational marketplace to your front door. We exist to bring you the latest and greatest from authors, artists, and artisans around the world. You're going to love this.
Hi, and welcome to Deeper Living. I'm your host, Rebecca Seitz, and today we're speaking with Eric Wilson, novelist of The Best of Evil and A Shred of Truth. Now, Eric, first of all, I want you to tell me that you're very sorry.
I am very sorry.
Eric, you're the reason that I stayed up all night last night.
Okay, now I'm really sorry.
I was finishing A Shred of Truth, which is such a fabulous book. It kept me on the edge of my seat. It's for our audience members that have not read it yet, It is suspense. You will have no idea, of course, who did it by the end. I did not. So I want to ask you, where do you come up with the idea for people who are shredding people with razors? And I'm just wondering what's going through your mind.
Well, I was a disturbed child.
Yeah.
I did grow up overseas, and I just experienced a lot of different cultures and saw life through a lot of different angles.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming back to America and going through school, high school and everything, I realized there's a lot of people outside of Christianity that are seeing life from a whole different angle than I did as a Christian. And I wanted to tell stories that would hopefully touch them and speak a language that they would understand and hopefully capture and entertain them while doing that. So I started reading a lot of suspense novels myself and learned to love that form of writing.
Now, who do you read? What novels do you read?
Well, I read all sorts of things. I grew up reading all these World War II thrillers, Jack Higgins and John le Carré, and kind of moved into the Cold War, and now we're into terrorists. And I didn't really want to do a large theme of terrorism. And in essence, this book is a story of terrorism, but on a very personal level. I wanted to take an extremist from a religious point of view who decides to exert his beliefs on someone else, which is really what we're seeing in modern terrorism. And so I took that into a very personal story, one person against Aramis Black, the main character in the book.
Now, Aramis Black first makes his appearance in The Best of Evil, which is the first book. These books really come together. You kind of need to read The Best of Evil before you read A Shred of Truth. They can stand alone. There are just some things in A Shred of Truth that will make more sense if you've read The Best of Evil. So tell us about The Best of Evil. What happens?
The Best of Evil.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
No, I never give anything away, I hope. The Best of Evil is based around the verse Romans 12:21 that says, don't let evil get the best of you, get the best of evil by doing good. So I took a character, Aramis Black, who saw his mother shot before his eyes when he was 6 years old, and he's lived a life of violence and got into gangs and anarchy, has tattooed on his arms, live by the sword, die by the sword. And an incident happens near the beginning of The Best of Evil where he imagines his mother in heaven watching what he's done with his life, and he realizes, I have totally dishonored her by the way I've lived, and he decides to try to change things around, but his past won't let go of him that easily, and he really has to learn to get the best of evil by doing good, and it's not an easy process for him. And he doesn't make all the right choices along the way, because most of us don't.
Thankfully,
and I wanted to show a more realistic view of a person dealing with their faith and trying to struggle through that day by day and how that relates to their past and their future. So
now, when you were writing this, did you know from the very beginning when you sat down to write this novel, I know exactly where I'm going?
No.
No.
Definitely not.
So how long did it take?
I envy those writers who can do that, but in a way I don't. I love the surprises that come along as I'm writing. I had the character Aramis Black and his basic conflict with his past. And I knew I wanted to set it in Nashville because I live in Nashville, and I wanted to show Nashville as a character in essence.
You did such a good job of that.
Well, thank you. You lived in Nashville, so I'll take that as a compliment.
I lived in Nashville, and I thought, oh, there's Music Circle, and oh, there's West End. It was great.
Well, moving to Nashville from Oregon, where I grew up, it was so much different than I thought it would be. I thought I'd have to wear cowboy boots and a hat to fit in or something.
Allowed.
Now I know that's pretty much a tourist if you see someone like that. But when I moved there, I thought, wow, this is so much more than I expected it to be. And it has some of those elements that I thought would be there, but there was a lot more, a much more cosmopolitan and artsy side of the city. And so I wanted to show some of that through the story. So I basically picked places I liked in Nashville or wanted to showcase and allowed Aramis' story to take me through some of those places, and they became a part of the plot. And went from there.
Now, I know when I'm writing, I'm like you, I never know how it's going to end. When I start, I hope that it's going to end at some point, maybe.
Hopefully.
So for me, when I'm about halfway through the novel, I can picture where I'm going. At what point do you get to when you think, oh, okay, that's the person who did this, and that's what's going to happen by the end?
Every book is a little different. With The Best of Evil, I knew about halfway through the book, like you're saying, I kind of came to a point of realizing I need to know where this is going, and I pulled it together. With The Shred of Truth, about a third of the way through the book, I came to a real crossroads where I had to decide, am I going to go one direction with his past or not? And I had put a very small amount of foreshadowing in the first book to open that door if I wanted to go there. So I sat there for about a week and didn't write anything, and then finally made my decision, and then it took off from there.
Well, I want to talk about book 2 when we get back from the break, so stay with us here at Deeper Living. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deeper Living, where we're speaking with novelist Eric Wilson about his books A Shred of Truth and The Best of Evil. Eric, before the break, you were talking to us about The Best of Evil and the thoughts behind it, how it came together, and when you knew the ending was coming. I want to sort of transfer to A Shred of Truth, which I loved. That's the one that kept me up all night last night. And I was talking to you before we started today about how I had no idea who did it by the end. So did you have any idea when you were writing?
I did have an idea. Sometimes as I'm writing, I'll waver and think maybe I should go with someone else. But in this one, I did know the theme of the book really is truth, and I wanted to explore that in relation to this very personal terrorism that I talked about, an extremist. And if you have an extremist, especially an extremist who's claiming to be a Christian, then they think they have truth. What is truth really then?
Right.
Because as a believer, I do believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, but we also see abuses of that.
Right.
And that really kind of applies to who I am trying to reach when I write. When I first got published, I told my publisher, I want to reach people on the fringes of faith, essentially people who grew up in church and have got burned by it, or have questions they felt like never got answered and they've sort of wandered away, or people who are interested and would never walk through the doors of a church, but they're interested in Jesus and what he taught and what is this whole thing about. So my books, I'm always trying to deal with characters kind of on that fence, and Aramis struggles with that. And so as the course of the book went along, I knew who the killer was going to be in relation to that question, but I wanted to bring up other possibilities, other people that would fit that basic category as well, and explore truth in relation to Southern history, it deals with a little bit of racism and the truths about the Civil War, that it's not all black and white, but there still are core things that I believe were right and wrong. And so I kind of was exploring a lot of different angles, but trying to hone it down to the very end to the truth.
You spoke in this book. It's not. I don't think it's giving anything away to our to our listeners. In this book, the character is in a class at a university in Nashville, and he is exploring truth, the theme of the book, and how easily we as a people can be led to believe something that has absolutely no basis in fact. And you've cited a lot of things that I thought were true that are urban legends from the internet. Do you remember a few of those that you put in there?
Oh boy, I explored a lot of urban legends, so I probably would misquote myself. I've written 2 books since this time, but there are a lot of urban legends. One example is I've heard since I was a kid that daddy longlegs were the most poisonous spider in the world. They just don't have fangs big enough to inject the poison. And I've heard people tell me that a number of times. And daddy longlegs aren't even a spider, technically. They're not an arachnid, and they aren't that poisonous. So that's just an example. You know, we come into issues of Coca-Cola. Was it really cocaine? And all these types of urban legends that we hear.
The Mormons own Coca-Cola, and that's not true either. And
yeah, there's all kinds of them. So as I explored, there is a website that, you know, debunks some of those, and so I had to come up with something of my own for fun.
Now, I like the one that you came up with. Do you want to share with the audience the one that they're given a project at the school, and they have to put a lie out onto the internet, and part of their project is going to be graded on whether or not people believe it, right?
Correct.
And do you want to share which one they put out there?
Sure. Aramis Black and his fellow classmates that are in the project with him, they put out the idea that Nathaniel Bedford Forrest, who was a general for the Confederacy, and he started the KKK, or was one of the founding people in that he actually was born from his dirt poor white mother having a tryst with a black slave from a neighboring plantation. So of course this would, you know, shed some interesting questions into the KKK history, and you know, it was something that would obviously be hidden, so they would want to cover up if it was true. So that's a lot of urban legends.
There was a kernel of truth in there. Of course, nobody would know that it would be a secret. I thought it was.
I think that's mostly most of the urban legends, and I think really the question of truth and even how Satan is the father of lies introduces lies to us as truths that we don't want to really, you know, if we start exploring and we might uncover something else that we don't want to deal with, so we let that little lie sit and it slowly festers. And that's really what happens in the book with the villain, is some of those lies in his own life have festered into something, you know, horrible, and he's taking that out on other people. So
now, some of the lies that you speak about in this book that come into play in the storyline are very old lies, and we've seen lots of books on the market lately about the Knights of Templar and some secrets in the church, and all kinds of things like that are very popular on the bookshelves right now, and some of that touches into this book. So I want you to tell us, in the book, the craftsmen play a very big role. Who are the craftsmen?
That's a purely fictional group that I made
I wondered if they actually existed. I thought, I've never heard of this group. Who are they?
I'm glad you wondered. Actually, in Nashville, there is a Fort Negley, that the KKK met at right after the Civil War, and so I've actually explored the idea of writing a separate novel dealing with a modern version of the KKK meeting up there secretly, and, you know, some racial tensions and how that plays in the present. And so I wrote this book with that thread to lead into a future book. But the craftsmen are not a real group; they're a modern version of the KKK.
In this book, though, they are a modern version of the KKK.
Correct.
That's who they are.
Yes.
I'm so glad to know that didn't really exist, because I was very concerned by the end of the book. I thought I need to find out who they are and where they are and be on guard. So that's very good to know. Thank you for setting my mind at ease. You're watching Deeper Living today, where we're talking with Eric Wilson, author of A Shred of Truth and The Best of Evil. Stay with us. Welcome back to Deeper Living, where today we're speaking with novelist Eric Wilson. And one of the things that I want you to be aware of is that Eric Wilson not only wrote A Shred of Truth and The Best of Evil, but he is also writing the novel version of the movie Facing the Giants. Eric, I want you to tell us a little bit about going from movie to book, because normally it goes the other way around. So how did that come about?
Well, we always hear that the book is better than the movie, so hopefully that hasn't been ruined by flipping it around. I actually was contacted by my publisher. I was at work that day. I work at FedEx Kinko's in Nashville, and I was writing, and I, on the side, checked my email, and happened to see this email from my publisher saying, "Would you like to be involved in a project for a movie?" And I said, "Sure, okay, what is it?" They said, "Well, we can't tell you all the details, but it has to be finished in a month." So,
never mind.
Sure, why not? Okay. And then I went and told my boss, "Can I take a month off?" And my boss has been very flexible with me. So the process essentially turned into Facing the Giants, and I was able to meet the Kendricks, the brothers who created the movie. And I hadn't even seen the movie at that point, so I had to go watch the movie. And
well, for those who haven't, what's the movie about?
The movie is an inspirational football story. There's a lot of those out there. The difference is it's told from a Christian point of view. Essentially, it's a coach of a team, a little high school team, who's had 6 years of failure after thinking he would go, be a successful coach. And along with the failure on the coaching field, he's also wanted to have children, and his wife and he have not been able to have children. And so a number of different circumstances have not played out the way they hoped. Right. And the story starts off with that angle and leads into him turning his life around to say, "Lord, I'm going to give it all to you. Whether I win or lose in life, I'm going to praise you." And so that's really the theme of this story. I happen to like dark, sort of morose books. I never would have guessed you write murders. So it was not what I typically would say I'd go watch. But once I watched it, I caught myself with tears in my eyes a number of times watching the movie, because it related in certain ways to my wife's and my own present at that time, but things we were going through. An example is our car window still doesn't roll down. We have no air conditioning. And in the movie, he has a car that keeps dying, and he has a window that's broken out in the back. And I thought, boy, I can relate to this.
We had that. I have to tell you, we had a station wagon growing up, and it's the family joke now that you had to roll the window down to unlock the door. And if you wanted the headlights to come on, you got out and kicked them, and it had black stuff that fell from the ceiling. It was a great little car. And we drove it from Tennessee to Arizona. Yes, it was that car.
Yeah, that's definitely been the cars in our experience. So I really related to the movie right away on that one thing alone. And then as it went along, I thought, this is a great movie, and I really would love to bring this into a book. And the process was interesting. I basically wrote all the screenplay. They gave me the screenplay. I typed that all out.
You retyped the whole thing?
Yeah, but as I did, I wrote all these notes from the movie. I had the movie going on DVD on my computer, and I'd watch scenes over and over and over again and write details. He's wearing a red shirt. He shows a look of disgust. I just put all these details from the movie, and then I started to build around that backstories for the characters. And one thing that doesn't happen the way anybody really wanted at the end, but I felt like some of the complaints of the movie, and the directors agreed with me on this, were that it ended too happily and presented
Can't have happiness, not from a guy who writes murders.
No, but the concern was that it presented a prosperity gospel, is what they were accused of. And I talked to them, they are not at all coming from that angle. They were trying to say, these are real things we've seen God do, and he does miracles. He doesn't always do them. We praise him whether or not he does, but he does do miracles.
But he does, yes.
And so, I'm fully behind that. I believe that. I haven't always seen it when I wanted it, but neither does the character in the movie at times. So I did have one sort of bittersweet thread I wove into the book, and they told me, we'll read it and see if we like it, and we'll go from there. And when they read the book, they said it works. We liked it. It actually choked us up a little bit. So I said, okay, thanks for letting me put that in. And then I also threw in an ode to the Oregon Ducks, since I'm from Oregon. They let me get away with that. So
it's finished. You're done.
I'm done. It'll be in stores in September. So
in September. Wow, it's coming quick.
Yeah, it was a very fast project.
And you wrote that entire novel in a month.
Yes. It was their story, so it wasn't quite the same as creating from scratch, but
Right.
it was. I spent a lot of hours working on that, just night and day.
Now,
And
what do you
loved
have
it.
coming after Facing the Giants, the novel?
There are some other possible projects. The one that is certain is the Jerusalem's Undead trilogy. I have three books set in some historical things from Jerusalem. It'll be set in the present, but again, pulling back into history, as I've done in most of my books. And it will be a very different genre.
Have you been to Jerusalem to do
I
some?
have. I just
I'm
came
envious.
back. It was amazing. I had an incredible trip, so I'm excited about doing those books.
And when will those be out?
They'll be out next year, fall of next year.
Well, you always, I loved that you incorporated, again, some of the Knights of Templar, and you made up the craftsmen in these books, and now it sounds like you're going to do that in the next series, incorporate some history. Is that just something that you love to do? You have a love of history?
I do. I love seeing how history plays into the present. So
We keep having people on the show who love history. I think I'm going to have to develop a love of history.
you will.
Eventually, I will. You're watching Deeper Living, and we're speaking today with Eric Wilson, author of A Shred of Truth, The Best of Evil, and coming soon, the novelization of the movie Facing the Giants. Stay with us.
Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. From the Father of lights, from the Father of lights, we prove there is no changing. From the Father of lights, who is always the same. Praise the Lord, oh, praise the Lord, oh, yeah. Every good and perfect gift. Let's all sing it together. Comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. Every good and perfect gift. Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. From the Father of lights, from the Father of lights, we prove there is no changing. From the Father of lights, who is always the same. Praise the Lord, oh, praise the Lord, oh, yeah. Up we go. Praise the Lord, oh, praise the Lord, oh, yeah. Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. Every good and perfect gift. Every good and perfect gift.
Welcome back to Deeper Living, where we're talking with novelist Eric Wilson, the author of A Shred of Truth, The Best of Evil, and coming soon, the novelization of the movie Facing the Giants. Eric, you've told us that you're trying to reach a bit of a fringe segment of Christianity, the ones who maybe have been burned by church, or maybe have never even walked into the church doors, but they have a question about faith and a question about Christianity. Because of that, you've written some stories that are a little bit darker than what some people may expect to find on a Christian fiction shelf. They're not prairie romances, that's for sure.
No, definitely not.
Have you gotten any complaints from the Christian market?
I have had some complaints. I have two angles to that answer. The first is dealing with my editors, who are very aware of the buyers and distributors in the Christian market, and there are parameters that they've put on that, some of
Right.
which I agree with, some of which I don't. And then the other is specifically readers. I'd say with readers, most of my readers seem to be people, the covers, the idea of the book draws the right people for
Right.
what I'm trying, or who I'm trying to reach. There have been a few. I had one lady who, after my second novel, a different one than these ones we've discussed, but she brought up the fact that I had mentioned some gay characters in the book. They weren't, their lifestyle wasn't portrayed or anything, just some questions of their successful relationship compared to the Christian's unsuccessful marriage were questions I thought were very relevant to our time right now. And this lady loved the book. She said, I couldn't put it down. It was great. I liked it all. I just didn't like you portraying gay characters. And
That's
the end of her
positive.
email, as it went, it got a little more vehement about that issue, and finally said, "Are you trying to reach Christians or sodomites?" And I
Oh,
said,
heavens.
"I'm trying to definitely reach sodomites, drug addicts, anybody like
Tax
me who's a
collectors,
sinner and needs
anybody."
Jesus to, save them from their sins." And so that's absolutely who I'm trying to reach. And if I'm not trying to reach those people, I'm not sure why I'm writing. There's other writers who do want to provide comfort food. I've heard it actually called that for Christians. I guess I don't really have a problem with that, but personally that's not what I'm supposed to be doing with my writing, and I'll never settle for that.
Good.
And so that has been an issue with my editors on a few subjects. Some of them, though, are things I never thought would be an issue, like somebody lifting a leg to pass gas. And I was told that we can't put that in there.
When I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, that got their editing.
Yeah, I thought, my argument was, you're right, I don't know any Christians who ever pass gas, so we shouldn't put that in there. And
unbiblical.
so they finally let me go with that one. But it had a purpose. It was to show that it was a security guard who wasn't aware that he was being watched.
Right.
And nobody would probably do it in the way he did if they knew they were being watched. So it had a specific reason, and that's why I think they let it go through. If there's a reason behind it that makes sense to the story. And I think that's fair. I think that should be true in any story, whether it's violence or sexual issues or whatever. I think it all should be fair game. As Christians, are all things we have to deal with. It's just, where does it fit in the story and how far do we need to take it?
Well, we should make our audience aware. Some of those issues are in your books, but they are dealt with in a way that they're relevant to the story, and you need to see those things so that you will know the story.
Absolutely.
We've been talking today with novelist Eric Wilson, who's written A Shred of Truth, The Best of Evil, and coming soon, the novelization of the movie Facing the Giants. Thanks for watching Deeper Living. Find us tomorrow. Thanks.